Hello, everybody, and welcome back to IndieQuest, the celebration of the indie and obscure, your home for a bunch of awesome video game talk. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, also known as the Hype Man on the great and wonderful Polykill Discord. I'm here with my co-host, Seth, also known, or probably mostly known as Captain Drachma on the Discord. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, other than when spring comes along, and we've talked about this a little bit. When spring comes along, it brings amazing weather in most places, flowers and things, but for me personally, and I think for a lot of people, also brings along some allergies. So they are kicking my butt today. And I know you and I talked about it a little bit beforehand, but feeling it. Even the Claritin isn't doing it today. So
I'll just kind of like had like a fuzzy feeling in your nose and throat and everywhere.
I'll be bringing some of that 9 a.m. Steve energy today. That tired, mellow Steve. Because I think we've talked about it before. Steve is like two different people, whether it's 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. So
yeah, definitely for sure. Yeah, I'll try to bring a little bit of hype. Like, it's a good time. It's a good time to be like somebody who's playing video games. Like, there's a lot of awesome big games out there. Like, we got Zelda. I'm excited. I've been playing I almost said Fallen Order. I've been playing Jedi Survivor. We got Diablo coming up. Like, for like big games, like, there's a lot of them. And then for like movies and stuff, there's like all the movies are popping off right now. So I went and saw Fast and the Furious 10. I was all excited about that. Good times. That's one of those good, dumb, bad movies, I guess. Like, it's so bad that it's good. So yeah, everybody knows I'm a huge fan of that series. Yeah. So right now in the summer, I'm just kind of enjoying, like, there's just so much still like be entertained by. So even talking a little bit more indie games, even if they're not brand new, I'm excited to dive into that world a little bit. That's what the fun of the show, right?
So I feel like I'm in this weird camp with the Fast and Furious movies. Like, my favorite Fast and Furious movie is easily the first one.
The first one?
Is that weird?
No, like, that is the classic, right? That's what all the... Like, there's a formula that is made from the first one that they use over and over again.
I've said it before, and people are like, how can you like that? It's so cheesy. The acting's not that good. And I've even watched it recently, and I agree. Like, it's not as good as it was when I watched it in 2001 or whenever it came out. But it's, I don't know, it just set all those characters in motion. I don't know. I like it still a lot to this day. There's a lot of iconic moments. I don't know. It's cool.
It's just like that whole series is just escalation, the series. So like the first one, what are they stealing? DVD players out of trucks.
Yeah, stereos.
The newest one was Jason Momoa, right, as the villain, giant bomb rolling down and blowing up part of the Vatican. Like that's where they're at with this series, So it's like, yeah, opposite end of the spectrum for sure.
See, I think that's why I'm a little bit more attracted. I even like Too Fast, Too Furious. Like, I think Tyrese Gibbs is in that one. Like, I like the early ones where these things could happen, and I'm all about fantasy. I just don't love turning something that was very realistic into like a hyper, not hyper fantasy or hyper unrealistic, but the things that happen now. I guess I can't get into as much.
Just go ahead and say it. They're just superhero movies with cars. Like, that's what it is,
Yep.
So
they're one step away from being Transformers at this point.
Right. Oh, okay. I would say this is like a very mild spoiler. There's a truck. There's a truck in the movie, right? And it looks like Optimus Prime.
Really?
There was literally a time in the movie, in the back of my head, I was like, that's not going to happen. There's no way it didn't happen. Mild spoilers, I guess. But like at first, I'm like, it looks just like the Optimus Prime truck, and they're at the point in the series that if that happened, I'd be like, why not? You know what I mean? So
yeah, we're here already. Yeah,
yeah, pretty much. So,
that's funny.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I'm just having a good time, just kind of vibing through the summer. This is summer technically. It feels like it. It's been warm enough, so yeah, basically just enjoying the good weather and having a good time right now. So.
You watched Fast and Furious 10.
Yeah.
Yesterday morning, my movie watch was also car related. I watched Smokey and the Bandit. So
Oh, yeah, that's a good movie too. That's definitely a different vibe.
For very
completely,
different
but
reasons.
yes.
Yeah. That's
That's a
funny.
solid movie though. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're here to talk about indie games. On IndieQuest, we're building the list, the quest log, the giant ever-growing list of awesome games you should check out. And at the top, I noticed that lately, and thank you guys, we have been getting more listeners than usual. Like every week, it's like kind of a little bit more people are, filing in. So I figured I would tell people what we do on this show at the top before we get into it. We are building that list. There's two sections, the main quest and the side quest. The main quest is a game that you can recommend to anybody. It's just a wonderful game. You're going to have a good time if you play a game on the side. I'm on the main quest. And on the side quest, you're probably going to have a good time, but usually it's something that's a little more niche. Mm-hmm. Am I saying that right? Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, and maybe has a caveat or two that doesn't make it like, hey, everybody and their mom can play this game. But if you like this style of game, you are probably going to dig it and maybe throw it on your list to play down the line. So that's what we do here. And I guess we can just jump right into it. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I don't remember how we did it last time, but I am bringing a game that is more so a new hotness, although I don't know how many people know about it. I'm wondering if you have heard of it, but I think it's a fairly popular, newer indie game, but could also certainly be flying under people's radars. So I am going to be talking about today, and sticking in that Metroidvania like I had 2 episodes ago, 9 Years of Shadows. Have you heard of it? I haven't
heard of it. Mm-mm. Maybe I'm trying to look it up right now. No, I have not seen or heard of this game. So what is it all about?
Yeah. So like I said, it's 2D Metroidvania, gated exploration, side-scrolling. I kind of want to paint a picture a little bit before I just get into the general overview of the game. Imagine a very hyper stylized, not even hyper stylized, but a very pretty Symphony of the Night is kind of what it really reminds me of in terms of the graphical style. So as I start getting into it, people can at least have that picture in their mind.
Yeah, it's like Symphony of the Night with I don't know, it feels like it has almost like a comic book feel to it. Like when I'm looking at the actual artwork, yeah. So.
It is extremely colorful, and color actually has a lot to do with the background premise of the game. So I will get into that a little bit later, but it did come out this year, March 27th, and currently it is actually only on Steam, which maybe, Josh, that's why you hadn't heard about it. I know you do play games on your Steam Deck, and you know plenty of what's coming on Steam, but it hasn't come out.
There's a lot.
Yes, right. There's a lot, and it hasn't come to consoles yet, and I feel like once games come to console, they get a lot more recognition. And I imagine once it does, I think it's coming later this year to Switch, to PlayStation. I'm not entirely sure exactly what. I'm almost positive it's coming to Switch, though. So everybody be on the lookout for that if you are not a PC gamer, which I imagine several of our listeners don't play on PC. But it was developed by Halberd Games, which is hilarious for a reason I will get to in a moment, and then published by Freedom Games. So that will take us right into gameplay. Like I said, it is a Metroidvania. You use one button for attacking with a halberd. You are actually,
there you go.
Yeah, you are actually playing the game, which I always like when developers do this. It happens more and more and more, but I always love to point it out. You're playing as Europa, which is a female protagonist. And I always love to be able to, play as not the typical masculine dude, right? It's nice to be able to play a game as someone different than that generic character, right? And there's also a very unique characteristic that doesn't happen in a lot of other games like this. You actually have a companion with you. At the very beginning of the game, it is black and white, and you're not entirely sure why. You can tell Europa has been living in this world for a while, and I think there's actually a little bit of backstory about how it's been 9 years, right? Rolls right into the title, 9 Years of Shadows. But then you meet this little teddy bear named Apino, and that teddy bear makes the world colorful again. And
Nice.
the whole premise behind it is you need to travel through this world and try to keep the color, get things back to normal because something happened that made everything dark. And it's funny, it's not like everything's just like pitch black or something. Like the color is still there, but it's just somebody turned the lights out. No, the color is sucked out of everything. It's just gone. And then it all restores when Europa and Apino get together, right? So the fun thing about Apino is you can use the bear to shoot magic projectiles, and your left stick you can rotate around and actually move Apino around you and shoot in whatever direction you want, which is very cool. And that definitely leads me into the health system because it works in conjunction with the magic. There is like the traditional hit points, right? So you start out with, think 2 heart containers. They're really shaped more like jewels or something. But if you get both those, if you get hit twice, you're dead. And that probably sounds like rough, right? Like that's not a lot of hits that you can take, especially for a game like this. Typically you can take more hits. It's not like a old school action platformer or something where you can only take 2 hits and you're dead. Well, you can take more hits than 2 because your magic system actually doubles as a shield. So you have like a blue bar next to your health that fills up and depletes depending on how much you're using Apino to either shoot enemies, or there are things that like lock doors that can be triggered by Apino's magic. And you use your magic bar and it depletes a little bit when you use your magic, but it also depletes as a shield. Whenever you get hit, you will get knocked down some of your magic. So it doubles as a health system on top of, just the magic. So it's pretty nifty. Reminds me a little bit of like Halo or something, right? When you're playing Halo and you have that shield.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's kind of almost risk reward. It's like,
Yes.
oh yeah, I can use the magic a little bit more in this room. I think I'll be okay, but maybe you get a little greedy with the magic and then you have 2 hits and you're dead, right?
Right.
Type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's times when you have to use the magic because there are certain enemies that can only be hurt by magic. They'll just say guard if you try to attack them. They will only get hit by the magic. So the game forces you to use it sometimes, but at other times, it's like you said, very much risk reward. You can stay at a very safe distance from enemies and just pot shot them from across the room with your magic, but then by the time you actually advance, you're going to have nothing left. The nice thing is, if you run out of magic, Apino cannot use his abilities anymore, right? You can't use him for anything, and he'll just be like grayed out, which is kind of in reference to the color thing. You can press a button and hug the teddy bear. Literally give him a hug, and that will restore about half of your bar of magic. And you can do that at any time.
So the power of love restores the color to the universe.
Pretty much, yes. And we'll get into some of that in the story stuff, but yeah, that's kind of what's happening. Like, yeah, you're caring for the bear, and so the bear is caring for you, type of deal. But
nice.
Anyway, the cool thing is you can level both magic and health by finding these blue and red notes. It is a Metroidvania, right? So there are secrets everywhere. There's breakable walls that you don't know about except for the fact that they're a little bit cracked. So you can break through them and you can find different secrets that way. You can find map sections that will, make the map be able to be viewed and things like that. There's all sorts of collectibles like that. Another main mechanic is you collect 4 different kinds of armor, and each armor represents a different element. There is like electric, fire, earth, and water, and each of them can actually hit like locked doors to be able to open them. My first thought was a la Guacamelee. Guacamelee does that, where you can only use a certain ability on certain doors to open them. But if you want to think armor, right, the other thing that I immediately go to is Metroid. And you're playing as a female protagonist. I'm going to get to this in a minute, or I was going to, but I'll just say it now. This is very much like waifu vania. Like, I don't know if you're looking at, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of anime looking women, right? I mean, there are some male NPCs too, but lots of anime looking women. The intro scene has Europa going through like a Sailor Moon esque putting the armor on where like she's just a silhouette and you can just like see the outlines of her body, and then she gets the armor on and now she's, you know, powerful and things like that, right? Very, very Sailor Moon in that way. But it is a cool system because of course, like you get to a water area, for example, and all you can do is float, right? But you know that you're eventually going to go find something that allows you to dive into the water, and you find the water suit, and now Europa is basically like a mermaid, and you can press the B button to actually swim, right? So that's
Yeah, it's like you're exploring, and then there's a gates that you gotta get through, right? So okay.
yeah, exactly. It has very much been done before in other games, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it is fun. It is certain, like the combat and the action of the game, and everything you find certainly keeps you progressing, and it is a good time.
Yeah, it looks like very frenetic. Like it looks like really fun, like fast paced, pick up and play and just have a good time type gameplay. So
I would actually say it's not super fast paced. I mean, there are combos, right?
right.
But I'm trying to think of like something that is extremely like Devil May Cry or something like it. It isn't like that. It's you put your combos together, and then there's like a heavy attack too, right? So you can use one button to do a combo and then a heavy attack, and then you kind of stand there for a second, and then you do a combo and a heavy attack. So it is a little bit of that balancing between attacking, and there is also a dash button where, a la Symphony of the Night, Europa will actually dash backwards. So if you're fighting an enemy that's right in front of you, and you know they're about to attack because they're doing their cue, they do that little glow thing that you know they're about to attack, you jump backwards, right? So
Nice.
there are a lot of bosses. So if anybody enjoys a good 2D boss battle, there are plenty of them in this game. Honestly, I lost count. There's probably over 20 easily.
Wow. That's a lot. Are they like pretty varied too? Like each time you go?
Yeah, honestly, there's it's hard. I mean, the main bosses are always like very big and screen filling, but for the most part, the majority of the bosses are side bosses that are completely optional. You don't have to fight them at all. So if you just enjoy fighting bosses and want the option to be able to either beat them or don't, this is a great game for that. And in terms of like gameplay and combat, the boss battles are some of the most fun I had easily with this game. They are really interesting, like you said, varied. There are some that are like the same size as Europa, you know, Mega Man sized bosses. And then there are some that are massive, like think Kraid from Metroid or something like that, Super Metroid. Just huge.
That's awesome.
Fill up the whole screen. Yep. So I will say, before we move out of gameplay, for a gated exploration, Metroidvania style game, this is extremely linear. It gives you a little bit of fake semblance of openness, right? Where it's like, yeah, you could go back and find this, you could go back and find that. But so many of its quote unquote gates, like you talked about earlier, Josh,
Right.
there's not a whole lot of turning around at times. Sometimes you'll jump down into a pit and you'll try to go back, and there is no going back. You can't get back, and there's no fast travel, like at least not like that. There is a main elevator, but usually on every side route, there's no fast travel back to the main world. So you're kind of just stuck. The only thing you can really do is quit out of the game right then and return to your previous save because there is no auto saving. But you just fall down a pit sometimes and you're just stuck down there, and you just got to progress forward, and you're almost in like a little mini dungeon in a way. You're just, without walking through a door or something, you just fell into something. And it's like, nope, now there's nothing else to do but to continue forward, get whatever power is going to get me out of here, right? And then progress again. So, fairly linear in that way. I think
Yeah, did you like that, or did it feel like the thing with like these type of games I enjoy myself is like I'll come back here later in the game,
Yes.
and then you're like, and then you think about it like 4 hours later, and you finally get whatever it is to get through that door. You're like, I'm going back to the beginning of the game and going through that door to see what's behind it. Does it have that feel to it, or
It does in certain areas. There is one specific part at the very beginning of the game where it's like, oh, that's something I'm going to have to return to later, right?
right?
But the majority of it, honestly, when you get into these side sections, the majority of them can be completely completed with whatever you find in that side area. And it's kind of weird like that. So there's not a whole lot of that seeing something and rediscovering it later, like in most Metroidvania games. It's you get off in these side branches and it's very linear at that point, which isn't a terrible thing. I think some people kind of grow tired of constantly checking the map. What did I miss? Where do I have to go back to? So in that way, it's kind of nice, but at the same time, a lot of people would go into this game thinking this is going to be a certain way, and it isn't, right? So, but that will take me to what I think is some of the best aspects of 9 Years of Shadows, and that is the presentation. It is extremely good looking, 32-bit-esque 2D Metroid. I mean, it is incredible to look at, and color is such a huge part because I think they really did a good job of introducing the world in black and white, because when you see everything in black and white and then they bring the color out, it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so that contrast it was an excellent design choice in my opinion. The story though was not great. If you are looking for an excellent story in a game like this, I would suggest you might go elsewhere to find it, because it was very convoluted. There are a lot of like side stuff that you can find where there's just like this big gem and it would just give you a lore dump. And so often, like at first I was really trying to invest myself in it, read everything, but eventually I just didn't know what was going on completely. And I'm like, I'm just going to play the game. It's pretty to look at and I'll get to another great part of it in a little bit. But yeah, I mean,
You're like, just turn my brain off and just enjoy the combat and the boss battles, right? Pretty much.
yes, exactly. So I kind of did that and enjoyed it that way. I mean, it does have a cool conclusion, but a lot of it, and you maybe could guess this from some of the things I've already mentioned, it's very edgy in certain ways, very edgy in certain ways. And a lot of indie games can be that way, right? They really drive home their point. But, I mean, it wasn't necessarily for me. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. The cool thing, though, you actually have to rescue these orchestra members, and they're the ones that give you these side quests. So it's really interesting that you rescue all these people, because an amazing thing about this game is, and the best thing about this game, and perhaps the best thing about any game I've played that's come out this year,
Oh, wow.
is the music. The music
is it?
absolutely incredible. Yes. It is stunning. It is, every single track is just the best thing you've ever heard. And it's hilariously, I kept thinking like, man, I feel like I've heard songs that sound like this. Like, of course, as a musician, you're going to ape on to your inspirations and things like that. But I'm going to attempt not to butcher any of these names. Some of the people that actually composed some of the music in this game are Michiru Yamane, who did Castlevania music, Munami Matsume, who did Mega Man music,
Wow.
and Norihiko Hibino, who did Metal Gear Solid music, which I
Holy
know
crap.
you'll like, Josh. Yes.
Yeah.
So it is an indie game, 100% small team, but they They shelled
They brought
out.
the big guns. Yeah, they
Yeah,
brought the
for
big
the
guns.
music.
It reminds me of Sea of Stars, bringing in the Chrono Trigger guy.
Yes,
It's
right.
similar energy there, I guess.
Yes. And I'm glad they did, because so much of what the story does, so much of what the side story does, or it kind of brings the music aspect together. Like I said, you're rescuing all these musicians for this orchestra, and every time you do, each of them are playing a different instrument. So that's a different aspect, right? Especially when you get them all together and then they play for you. So music and color are huge parts. I don't want to spoil anything that that regards the story, but they're huge parts of what make up the story. But Josh, do you have any other questions about 9 Years of Shadows before I throw it on the quest log?
No, I'll comment on. I love the concept of the game, just like bringing color to the world. Like I love Okami for that.
Yeah.
There was another game, the Saboteur. He's like a first-person shooter that did that. I love it when they use color like that in a game. So just the premise is cool. It does look like a really fun game. Like looks like it plays really well. And you're the gameplay guy here. I would say you and Steve both are probably, but I know you're like, you like a hard game. Is this a hard game, or is it pretty like easy to get through?
It is, and it was part of my little bit here, but it's pretty, honestly, really easy to get to. There wasn't very many times that I encountered a boss. Because of the magic shield mechanic, it really makes some bosses trivial. You can always, all you have to do is really just find an opening, a la Hollow Knight, we talk about all the time. But in Hollow Knight, you can charge up. Well, in Hollow Knight, there's like a little pool that allows you to charge that up. In 9 Years of Shadows, you just have to find an opening where you can hug a peanut really quick, and it takes 3 seconds. But as long as you can find that and not get hit, you have unlimited health, basically, right?
Right. And it doesn't look like, so the bosses aren't like spamming you to the point where you just can't do it sometimes or anything.
No.
It's very forgiving then, which
Yes.
Hey, that I'm sure that will maybe weigh on your decision here on the quest log. I'm actually excited to hear what you have to say, because I'm not sure where you're going to go with it.
I am going to put 9 Years of Shadows on the side quest. And I will say, Josh,
Okay.
it doesn't have a lot to do with difficulty, although I think that some of the combat choices maybe did make the game too easy. I'm not really punishing it for that. It had more to do with the combat just being a little bit too slow and a little bit too samey for this kind of game, right? We've seen it a million times before. You are always using the halberd. Nothing ever changes, so it's not like some of the Castlevania clones that allow you to equip stuff and have that more RPG. It's really not an RPG at all in that aspect. If you're going to play this and you like Metroidvanias, I do think that you would enjoy this game for sure. But anybody else, I would say play it for the art style and music alone. It's worth it for those two things to at least experience it. And experience it in the context of the game, not just looking at screenshots, watching somebody else play, or looking up the OST, right? It is worth playing for those things. A huge detraction for me was the game actually, and I very rarely talked about performance of these games, but it crashed several times. I think 3 major times I had to actually fight the same boss that I never died to once. I had to fight that boss 3 separate times. Like, it was just kind of frustrating.
It's kind of one of those things where if it starts hindering your enjoyment of the game, it's worth mentioning, you know, like, hey, technically this happened, it might not be perfect. So, it's good to know going in if you decide to play this game, right?
Right. My game time, I think, was around 7 hours, but my Steam hour clock, which there was, some idle time in there where I left the game running and to go do something else, but it was 12. So the crashes did something where I would have to repeat stuff, right? And I definitely died some bosses, and that doesn't count in your game time. But to have a 5-hour difference between Steam clock and game time is a little Stark, I would say, right? But
Yeah.
it is $20 game. I actually got it on sale for about 16. I don't know if it's still on sale. I would say wait for a little bit of a deeper sale, maybe under $15 would be a very nice price point for this game. But yeah, I mean, it's a really enjoyable experience. I'm glad I played it. The music is absolutely incredible, and I'll be listening to the OST for a long time. So
Awesome. Hey, nothing wrong with a little spicy side quest in your life. And that was what, 9 Years of Shadow? That was the name of the game?
9 Years of Shadows. Yep. Available on Steam right now.
Steam. Awesome. Yeah, so we got one side quest. And let's see what I brought today. I did bring a game for you. We talked about this game. Not you and I. Me and Steve talked about it. I think probably in 2020.
Yeah.
It was like kind of like we were introing the show. We're like, hey, what you playing right now? You know, having one of those conversations. And I was like, I'm playing a little game called If Found. Have you heard of this game besides from me talking about it?
I have honestly not heard of this game. I don't even remember you talking about it. So I'm very interested to hear what you have to say, and I'm going to start looking some stuff up about it right now.
Awesome. So If Found is a narrative visual novel. So I don't know how many visual novels we've actually brought to the show, but it's a story. Okay, the pitch for the game from the developers is If Found. Let's see, hold on. I had it right in front of me. Okay, If Found is a game about going home, coming out, and erasing everything. So pretty much the main concept of the game is very like hand-drawn, very simple looking, but very interesting. It has almost like a painterly style at times. It looks like hand-drawn, like somebody's jotting in a journal, like drawing the situations and writing about their life. And what you do, the main mechanic, and I played on PC, is you have a eraser. So basically, you have like a blank screen. You just start erasing, and then it reveals the next part of the story. And they use this to great effect throughout the entire game. Say if there's like somebody they want to talk to, like that comes up around the corner, they can erase part of the scene. That person's there now, and then you're talking to them. And it's very simple. So I would call the interaction in this game maybe not super in depth. It's very simple, but the idea of erasing parts of this journal to reveal more of the story is very interesting and it's very thematic for the story. This is kind of almost the opposite of your game, because like your game was like super like gameplay heavy. This one's more just focused on this, I would say, very touching and poignant story that's about this Irish person coming home, you know, coming out to their parents, how this whole interaction happened. And it's just one of those coming of age stories that it's really just nice to appreciate and, read. It's a lot of reading. It's like you're going to be erasing pages and reading. That's the main two things in this game, but has nice music in the background. It's very serene feeling. There are times where there are stressful moments that happen and the music will change. It's very like, I would say maybe atmospheric music. Yeah. Nothing to like write home about or anything like that, but like, it's a very unique looking game. Just from your looking at it and looking it up, what do you think about the art style?
I think it's awesome. It looks like, it reminds me of the intro to Reading Rainbow. It doesn't. The characters aren't like happy like that. Like that, they don't look like those characters. But just the art style and very pencil drawn looking, right? Like that's
right.
There's certainly some color in a lot of them too, but just the same.
I would think of it this way: like it's a pencil sketch drawing, but a lot of times it's all the same color in the environment, just different tones. So say like there's like 4 people standing next to each other, and it's like all blue, but they're shaded with different tones to make them look more animated and things.
Yeah.
And there's subtle animations to the gameplay, like when you erase stuff, there will be like maybe like the background will, like the sky will, the stars will move, or like sometimes it will like zoom out or zoom into a scene as you're erasing, and it has like a nice little animation, but it's not fully animated, I wouldn't say. But like I said, the primary thing you're here for is the story, and there's kind of 2 elements to the story. You have the story of the girl coming home, or actually you find out trans individual coming home. And she transitions, and her parents aren't super happy about that, and that their story align about that. That's kind of the basic premise of the story. It's in Ireland, so there's some Irish slang that they actually have to like give you footnotes, like this is what this Irish word means and things like that.
Nice.
It's kind of kind of cool. It feels very personal, I would say, the story in this game, and there are scenes where she's kind of having a dream, like a nightmare, or like imagining like this end of the world scenario, and it's kind of like I definitely don't think it's happening. I think it's more like a dream that keeps occurring, and it has like thematic things that build into the actual storyline. That's the coming home and interacting with their friends and things like that. But it's like they're a space warrior going to the black hole in this other scenario, so it's kind of like goes between the two things. When something happens in real life, there's usually a dream that's kind of related to that in this quote-unquote space dream like state that you go into.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like telling two stories at the same time, but they're the same story, just that's what she is imagining at night and things like that.
and everything it's all told from a notebook, right? So whether it's the real world or it's all written down, right? That's what they are wanting you to think, at least.
So the way I interpreted it, I mean, maybe this isn't what was the intention, but the real life stuff's like in the book, like you're like erasing things. But when you do go to like the quote unquote dream like worlds, like you're the space explorer, basically the main premise of that section of the story is they're going to a black hole to like discover what's going on with it, and so pretty much you still erase in that, but it doesn't feel like a journal, if that makes sense at all. I don't know.
It looks a little bit almost like a coloring book inside,
right?
And I think the sections that you're talking about.
Yeah, so I would say the artwork and everything, the graphics, quote unquote, are more detailed in that section. Yeah. But what you're going to this game for is just a very nice and sweet and heartfelt, kind of sad story at times too. I think it's Annapurna game, so like It's published by them, developed by a small team called Dream Feel, and this is their first game. So Annapurna, or at least their first bigger game that they had, and Annapurna published it and everything for them. And yeah, I think that this one is hard to talk about more than that. Like that's basically the main premise. You're going home, you have the eraser mechanic, that's the main mechanic of the game. If that's not your bag, if you don't like just like loosely interactable, like kind of like you're not a fan of walking simulators, you're probably not going to like this game. Like that's pretty much what you get when you get this type of game, is you have a very loose interaction with the game itself, but the story playing out is definitely worth visiting, I would say.
Something that I personally have always been a little bit apprehensive about trying a lot of visual novel style games is that they can take forever. Is this a long game?
It's about, I would say, depends on how fast you read, for one. But I would think it took me around 3.5 hours, somewhere around there.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Yeah, so it's probably like you could probably sit down one evening if you just carved out an evening and play through this. And that's pretty much what I did. Took an evening and just hung out and just enjoyed this just very heartfelt story. I really do feel like there is a developer or a writer for this game that this is just plucked directly out of their life. Yeah. That's what it really feels like. I'm not sure if that's the case. It might be a fictional character and possibly is, or there is some elements to like real life in it, right? Like there's stuff that you can relate to. I feel like even if you haven't been through this situation, like coming out or anything like that, most people will have stuff to relate to in the story. There's like love and loss and hopelessness and hopefulness, and I do think near the end of the story, even though there are sad parts to the story that will be a little bit of a downer, I do think it's very uplifting once you get to the end of the story. So yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about this game the other day, and I was like, you know what? We haven't talked about this game on the show, and I think it deserved the shout out,
Yeah. Something that you mentioned briefly is that it's got really good atmospheric music. Would you ever listen to the soundtrack on its own, or does it just play really well in the game?
I think that if you're you're just like chill beats to study to type of vibe music more than like, hey, I'm gonna go rock out to this in my car, right? That's pretty much the music that you're gonna get here. I do remember there are times where the eraser will switch. I don't know if this is like a spoiler or not. That's why I didn't really mention it too much, but it does switch to a pencil and you do write some things. I guess that's cool. a little bit of a, something that you can do in the game. But it's very much just living in this unique looking world, right? So
I mean, I always have to give credit to games who almost purely lean on the story, right? Because you have to write an excellent story. And we kind of came off of the game that I brought and said the story was so-so, and it was really lifted up by a lot of other elements. Whereas with this game, if your story's not good, then you just don't have a good game because that's what it's all about. So,
yeah. And I thought this game was very touching. I love the story in it. It spoke a lot to me, but it also gave me a new perspective, which is what great storytelling will do for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that if anybody's in the mood for a good, like just a really like emotional game, a very like it's gonna get to your core a little bit, like you're gonna feel something with this game. I didn't shed a tear, but I did feel it. You got that little catch in the back of your throat here and there. If you want something like that, this is definitely a game to check out. And any questions for me before I put it on the quest log here? Because I think I pretty much summed up what this game is. Yeah,
I think I'm very interested to hear where you put it. I have a feeling that I know where you're going to put it on the quest log, but I'm very interested to hear. So, Josh, let us know.
Okay, so this one was kind of hard for me to put on the quest log because it's like we say, main quest usually is a game we're going to recommend to everybody.
Yeah.
And this one is a visual novel, and it's not everybody's cup of tea. So I'm sitting here leaning on main quests and side quests because I'm like, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but the story is just really good. Like, it has enough merit to play the game if that's your opinion. But I feel like it's really straddling the line. I know I'm building this up a lot, but it's a main quest game. I'm actually going to put it on the main quest because the story is that good to me. Personally, this is a main quest game for me, but I will tell you, going into it, it is a visual novel. It's mostly lightly interactable game, but I think that the story is so strong and it's such a good package that it deserves to be on the main quest for me.
Yeah, I mean, a game that I brought somewhat recently, pretty darn recently, I guess, and I've talked about ad nauseum, I feel like, is Beacon Pines. Right. And similar, right? It doesn't look similar necessarily, but
no.
Similar premise, I guess. It's mostly visual novel, mostly reading, very light, interactable things, like you said, hardly any real gameplay other than pushing a button. And I put that on the main quest, and for the same reasons, I could have easily side quested it because it might not really be everyone's cup of tea. But I think if a game is that good, anybody that can read, right? Anybody that is through third grade can read and can probably get through a game. So it's not like it's difficult or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's achievable by anyone. And I think that as long as that visual novel aspect is really good part, I think it totally deserves to be on the main quest.
Yeah, this is kind of like an artsy-fartsy game, I guess, if you want to be like that. Yeah. But it's man, I think it doesn't look like anything. It has a story unlike any game I've played, and I think that the uniqueness of it alone would probably put it on a main quest. But I think the actual story itself is like, yeah, it hit me, So it's one I will think back, like, Before Your Eyes, which I brought twice because I liked it so much. That's a story I'll look back and think about, fondly on. And this is one too. So yeah, definitely check it out. Main quest with a bullet, I would say.
You absolutely wanted to make sure Before Your Eyes was brought before our ears, and I hear you. I hear you.
Okay, I see where you're going. All right, so we got If Found. I think this one, don't know if it's on any other platform. I didn't even check. I played it on PC myself. I think it's just iOS. No, it's on iOS, PC, and Switch. So
It seems like it would be a good handheld Switch game.
Yeah, you're going to play it with a touch screen if you're not going to be playing it with a mouse, I would say. Like, I think that would be a really nice way to play it, just use your finger to erase things. Yep. So, yeah, definitely would be the way I would recommend it. I think it would probably play really good on, like, an iPad or something, too, if you have the means to play it on an iPad. It would be a good time either way. But it's a cheap game. It's $12.99 on Steam. I'm sure it's, like, really cheap on Switch. Let me see. I can actually look it up right now. It's right here in front of me, if it ever loads. $12.99 on Steam as well. So, and on mobile, it'll probably be like a few bucks. So, yeah, great little game. I think that if you have a few hours and just want to experience the story, kind of get lost in a point of view that maybe you don't see every day, like an Irish person's coming out to their parents. Like, I'll never live that situation. So it's really nice to see that perspective and just have a nice story. So, yeah, recommended.
Awesome. So a nice little side quest game from me, 9 Years of Shadows, and if found, a main quest with a bullet from my co-host Josh. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be it for this episode. Nice, short and sweet episode. Let's go ahead and jump into our plugs. My name is Frantic on Twitter, at Frantic Society. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm at Frantic Society on Twitter. Where can they find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Captain Drachma on Twitter, and of course in the Polymedia Discord, the best place on the internet.
Yeah, and speaking of the Polykill Discord, a Polymedia Discord, shout out a show from the network. We're part of the network, the beautiful network with a lot of awesome shows, pretty much about anything. If you're into anything, you're going to find something you like on the network.
Tales of the Lesser Medium is back. We had Caleb on here recently, a few episodes ago, I guess, and they are going through Shenmue right now, which It's Rocket Sauce, I believe, was the one who sent that song in, right, of the amazing indie game Shenmue, and they're talking about that amazing indie game on Tales of the Lesser Medium, so everybody should go check that out.
I think we should shout out the recent Polykill episodes, which you were on one recently, and then it's been kind of like a cavalcade of people from the network because Steve is, hanging out being a cool dad. So if you like video game podcasts talking about beating video games or just talking about games that are coming out, if you're just into just talking about cool video games, I think that's worth your time, and it's usually pretty funny. They have some good times where you'll get a good chuckle or two out of it. Polykill. That's a pretty obvious one, though, but, it is what it is. There's also a bunch of other shows out over on the network. We got Split Up. We got Point and Drink Adventure. If you like movies, video games, alcohol, anything like that,
books.
You're going to have books. Yep, definitely. Got that Goosebumps podcast. Anything that you like, there's a good podcast on the Polymedia Network. So polymedianetwork.com. You can also send us emails, comments, questions, concerns, anything at IndieQuestPod@gmail.com, or over on Twitter you can give us a follow, IndieQuestPod, or send us DMs over there, which we've actually read a few of those. So if you have anything you want to talk to us about, that's how you can do it. So I think that's it for the show. Seth, why don't you give the folks out there just a nice, cool thought to end the show on?
Do you know what I'm going to say today, Josh?
What?
I can't remember the last time that you closed us out, so why don't you give us something? You always kick it. You always kick it to whoever the guest is, or either Steve or I. And I'm like, one of these days, I'm just gonna flip it right back at Josh. So I'm ready to hear some cool words.
Okay, some cool words. Stay cool out there, guys. Drink lots of water. Water is really important. Stay hydrated. If you haven't drank water today, go to the spigot and get some water and drink some water. It's very important for your health. It'll make you live longer. It'll cool you down in this hot summer that's going to come. It's going to be hot everywhere because global warming. Oh my God. We're not going to talk about that today. Anyway, drink water, enjoy the great weather, and let's ride.
I haven't heard anyone call it a spigot in a while. See everybody.
See ya.